The dog that ran after the moving truck. It was a sunny morning, the kind that promises everything will be just fine. The street was bustling. Curious neighbors peered out their windows and whispered to each other. At number 87, a family was preparing to move house. The moving truck was parked in front of the gate, its back open, swallowing boxes, furniture, and carefully packed souvenirs. Inside the house, hurried footsteps echoed on the hardwood floor. It was the typical rush of moving day. Children searching for lost toys, adults reviewing lists, yelling at each other to make sure nothing was forgotten. But in the corner of the garden, lying under the shade of the lemon tree, was Tobias, a medium-sized dog with golden fur and eyes that seemed to understand everything going on around him. He watched every movement attentively, his tail wagging slowly, half curious, half insecure. After all, he too could sense something was different that day. Tobias was more than a puppy. He was part of the family. He was there for birthdays, for lazy Sunday afternoons, for nights when the youngest of the house had nightmares and clung to his fur to fall asleep. He was the one who welcomed everyone with jumps and licks at the gate. He was the one who knew every corner of the house, every smell in the yard, every sound in the neighborhood. However, on that day full of rushing and boxes, no one noticed that Tobias was still there in the backyard when the last of the rooms was closed. The truck's engine roared, last words were exchanged with the neighbors, and then the family left. Tobias stood up slowly, confused. The gate closed. The truck began to move. He ran to the gate and barked, loudly. Once, twice, 3 times. No one heard him. Not even the boy who always hugged him in the morning. That's when something inside him awakened, a strength he didn't even know he had. Tobias took 2 steps back, took a deep breath, and jumped the gate with surprising agility. His paws touched the sidewalk, his nose lifted the family's trail, and he was off. The truck was already turning the corner when he started running, and he ran. Through the streets he knew so well. He passed the bakery where he always got a loaf of bread. He passed the park where he had buried a bone years ago. He passed the school where the children called him by name. But each step took him into new territory. The sidewalks became unfamiliar, the smells different. The asphalt burned his paws, but Tobias didn't stop. The truck was ahead, and so was his family. For hours he ran, hungry, thirsty, but with a single thought: return to them. At one point, it started to rain. Those heavy summer drops that fall without warning. Tobias huddled under a canopy, but when the rain eased, he resumed his run. His paws were now dirty, his fur soaked, but his gaze remained steady, determined. In the truck, already on the road, the mother was looking for something in her bag when she casually commented, "Where's Tobias's collar?" Silence fell like lightning. "He's in the car with you, isn't he?" the father asked, turning to the back seat. The boy looked around in panic. His younger sister began to cry. "We forgot Tobias." The truck screeched to a halt on the shoulder. Guilt washed over them. Amidst all those boxes, they'd forgotten what mattered most. Meanwhile, in the city, Tobias was beginning to slow down. His strength was fading. But then, something flashed in the distance. The reflection of the truck, a familiar sound of the engine, a smell. Whatever it was, it rekindled his energy. He ran once more, with everything he had. And it was at that moment, around a bend in the road, that the truck's headlights cut through the fog. The boy jumped out of the cab and shouted, "Tobia!" The dog's heart nearly leaped out of his chest. He barked, ran at full speed, and within seconds he was in the boy's arms, both of them soaking wet, shivering. But finally together, the whole family got out of the truck. His father knelt and apologized. His mother hugged him. His sister showered him with kisses. Tobias didn't understand every word, but he understood the gist. He was back where he belonged. From that day on, no one dared forget that Tobias wasn't just a dog. He was the heart of the family. And what is a home, after all, without a heart? The way back. The road seemed endless. Tobias, now lying in the boy's lap, was panting with exhaustion. His fur was damp, dusty, mixed with dried mud and the marks of adventure. The truck continued its journey more slowly, as if respecting the weary hero it carried. The boy hugged him tightly, as if to assure him he would never lose him again. Still, Tobias kept his eyes half closed, watching the world slip by outside the window. He was exhausted, but happy. He had overcome a challenge not even adults would have the courage to face. Hours later, the truck arrived at the new house. It was completely different from the old one. There was no lemon tree in the yard. There was no scent of the flowers her mother grew. The gate was made of high iron, and everything was so new. The family disembarked, still silent. The guilt of having forgotten Tobias still hung heavy in the air, but no one wanted to talk about it in front of him. They just watched him. And it was there, the moment the gate opened, that the dog hesitated. He looked at the new house and instinctively turned his head back, as if still searching for the old street, the neighbors, the tree that marked his territory. The boy tugged gently on his leash, but Tobias didn't move. He didn't understand why everything had changed. To him, this wasn't change, it was loss. That night, the family slept among boxes, but Tobias lay awake near the front door. His ears twitched at every strange noise. The new house lacked the familiar sounds, the creak of the old gate, the creak of the wood on the old floor, the footsteps of the night neighbor. It was all strange. He got up, sniffed every corner, but nothing comforted him. There was no old rug where he used to curl up, no his favorite toy, the one he'd forgotten inside a still-closed box. But despite his sadness, Tobias was loyal. And his loyalty was greater than any confusion. Even in his confusion, he lay down at the foot of the stairs and watched over the house. It was his mission. In the morning, when everyone woke up, the boy found Tobias lying there, like a silent guard. He hugged him and said softly, "Sorry, friend, I'll never forget you." Tobias wagged his tail. His eyes, though tired, shone with affection. This was his boy, after all, and that was enough. Over the next few days, the family struggled to adapt. The boxes began to disappear, furniture found its place, and photos returned to the walls. But Tobias remained strange. He ate little, barked less. He slept restlessly. One afternoon, his mother went for a walk with him. She wanted to show him the new neighborhood, let Tobias get used to it. But when she opened the gate, something unexpected happened. He took off. He sped off, turned the corner, and disappeared. His mother called to him, shouted, and ran after him. But she couldn't catch him. It was as if something had suddenly been ignited inside him, the need to return. The news spread quickly. The boy ran frantically down the street, asking neighbors, showing them photos on his cell phone. The family panicked. They had lost Tobias again. Only this time, they didn't know where he was going. But we know. Tobias was going home, or at least where his heart still believed it was. He followed the smells. He remembered the way. Even with new sounds, new cars, new people, he sought out traces only he knew. The smell of bread from the bakery, the tree with ants he avoided, the sound of the church bell on the corner. For 2 whole days, he wandered. He slept hidden among bushes. He ate scraps from an open garbage can. He drank water from a puddle in front of a store. And yet, he held on. Until finally, late in the afternoon of the second day, he recognized the street. His eyes lit up. His tail began to wag. It was her. That same sidewalk, the wall with paw prints, the gate that, even closed, exuded longing. But there was nothing else there. The house was empty. The windows were boarded up. The garden was dry and neglected. Tobias looked around, confused. He walked around the house, sniffing every corner. He tried digging in the same spot where he kept his toys. Nothing, not a smell, not a sound. He sat down in front of the gate and wept. A quiet, almost imperceptible cry. It was as if all his courage crumbled there. He had found his way, but he had lost his home. Just then, an old neighbor appeared. It was Donna Alzira, a woman with white hair and small eyes. She recognized him immediately. "Tobias," he said, crouching down. "My God, you're back." She ran to him, hugged him, and took him inside. That night he slept in an old bed she'd kept since her own dog had passed away. It was cozy. It was familiar. The next morning, the doorbell of the new house rang. The boy answered and gasped. Before him stood Donna Alzira, with Tobias in her arms. "I think you guys forgot this again," she said with a smile. The reunion was even more emotional. The boy couldn't stop crying. His parents, relieved, thanked him 1,000 times. And from that day on, they understood something fundamental. Tobias wasn't just a dog. He was the strongest link in what they called family. And no matter where the new address was, what city, what backyard, wherever Tobias was, that was home. The new house, the old heart. The morning after their reunion, the sunlight seemed softer. The sounds of the neighborhood seemed less strange. And inside the new house, where everything was still being put into place, Tobias lay peacefully, his nose pressed against the boy's feet, as if silently saying, "Now, yes, after." The escape and return, a lot changed. The whole family began to see Tobias differently. He was no longer just the playful little dog everyone loved. He was a survivor, a faithful guardian, a silent example of what it means to love unconditionally. The boy, above all, grew closer to his friend. Now, every day, he woke up a little earlier to play with him, brush his fur, take him for walks. It was as if he was trying to reward Tobias for the fright, the longing, the exhaustion. But there was still one problem. The new house still wasn't a home for Tobias. Despite the constant company, the renewed love, the increased attention, something still made him restless. Tobias was no longer the same carefree puppy. He woke easily at the slightest noise. He spent much of his time lying in the corner, watching. Even with the affection of his family, his gaze still carried a kind of sadness, as if something were missing, or as if he were waiting for everything to change again at any moment. The mother noticed first. She was always attentive to the silences. While the father and the children celebrated the return, she watched Tobias with the eyes of someone who understood that the heart takes longer to arrive than the feet. One day, as she put the food in the bowl, she knelt beside him and said softly, "We love you, you know, but sometimes loving isn't enough. You need to feel like this is your place." And that's how everything started to change. She had an idea, simple yet powerful. The following Saturday, very early, the family woke up with a plan. They donned old clothes, gathered paint, shovels, and tools. And together, instead of going out, they spent the whole day in the backyard. Tobias, suspicious, watched from afar, until he realized they were building something for him. The father measured, hammered, and assembled it. The mother painted carefully. The boy drew pictures on the sides, and the little sister glued small colored stones she'd saved from a trip to the old house. At the end of the day, Tobias approached and saw there, right in the center of the new yard, a little house just for him. But it wasn't just a doghouse. It was the expression of the love that was left unsaid. It was an apology for the rush, for the forgetfulness. It was the symbol that now they would no longer just live together, but truly belong to each other. The little house had his name in blue letters on top, Tobias. There was an old cloth that smelled like the old sofa, a pillow that smelled like the boy, a chewed up but cherished toy, and next to it, a bowl of water that was always cold. That night, Tobias crept in, sniffed every corner, and lay down. It didn't take 2 minutes for him to be sound asleep. For the first time since the move, he snored softly, like he used to, when everything was safe. It was a sound that brought peace to the whole house. Over time, Tobias began to explore the neighborhood with more confidence. Walks with him became adventures. They discovered a new square with tall grass where he could run free. They visited a small market where the fruit vendor always set aside a small piece of watermelon for him. People began to recognize Tobias as that dog from the truck story. The neighborhood spoke of him with admiration. A dog who walked miles back on his own, who found his old home, who survived and still kept his heart pure. It was as if, without realizing it, he had become a local legend. And so, a new chapter began. One day, while strolling in the square, Tobias smelled something. He stopped, raised his head, and walked toward the sound of crying. Behind a bench, huddled, was a puppy, skinny, dirty, with a lost look in his eyes. The boy approached, knelt down, and gently petted the cub. The cub trembled, but didn't run away. Tobias stood nearby, silently watching, as if he understood exactly what the little one was feeling. They took him home. They gave him a bath, food, and a name, Pingo. At first, Tobias was distant. He eyed his new guest curiously, but didn't get too close, as if testing whether the puppy really needed to stay. But over the next few nights, something happened. Tobias began sharing his space. First the rug, then the kennel, finally, the pillow. Pingo slept curled up on Tobias's belly, who now, more than ever, understood the value of welcoming. After all, he had known what it was like to be lost. Pingo's presence transformed everything. Tobias, who had been silent before, began to play again. He chased balls, barked at dry leaves, and jumped on the mango tree. The house, once too new, was now full of life. It was home. And the boy? The boy grew up too. He understood that love isn't just affection, it's attention. That fidelity is silent, but firm, and that those who truly love return, even if they have to run around the world. The challenges of a new beginning time passed, and with it, the family's routine began to settle into their new home. Tobias and Pingo, now inseparable, became the true owners of the yard. Running, playing, and exploring every corner, they filled the space with joy, laughter, and barking. But, as with every story worth telling, not everything was easy or smooth. Life has a way of testing even the strongest bonds, and for Tobias, the challenge was just beginning. It was early spring when something unexpected happened. One clear, cool morning, the family awoke to a strange noise at the gate. When the boy opened it, he found a small box, tied with a red ribbon. Inside was a note and a very fragile, almost invisible puppy, shivering with cold and fear. "Who would leave a little animal like that here?" the father asked, frowning. "Maybe someone who could no longer care for him," the mother replied, her chest tightening. Tobias, who until then had been accustomed to having Pingo as a companion, looked at him with curiosity, but also with a protective look. He knew what it was like to feel abandoned, lost, and now this puppy, named E. Nina by the family, brought that same feeling. In the early days, Nina seemed scared, weak, and in need of constant care. The family mobilized, taking her to the vet, feeding her carefully, and keeping her warm. Tobias always remained close by, almost like an older brother watching over the little one's well-being. But history wasn't just made of physical care. Deep in Tobias's eyes, the pain of that night he was forgotten still throbbed. Despite the renewed love, there were invisible scars, a silent fear of being left behind again. And this, Tobias began to express. Suddenly, he'd become restless whenever anyone left the house. He'd bark at the door and follow the boy through every room, as if he didn't want to miss a single movement. Sometimes, he'd cry alone at night, in the little house in the backyard, as if seeking a comfort he couldn't yet find. The boy noticed this change. He knew Tobias needed more than affection. He needed reassurance. One Saturday afternoon, they decided to do something different. They took Tobias to the city park, a place where he used to run and be happy. Along the way, the boy whispered, "Tobias, I promise I will never leave you alone. Not today, not ever." When they arrived, Tobias ran wild, sniffing everything, feeling the wind on his face. But unlike before, he stopped to look at the boy, always checking to see if he was nearby. Meanwhile, Pingo and Nina ran around, playing hide-and-seek, laughing at their little pranks. In the middle of the park, they found a group of children playing with a colorful ball. The boy invited Tobias to play. At first, Tobias hesitated, unsure, but soon the memory of that old joy flooded his heart again. He ran after the ball, jumping, barking, and doing pirouettes that made the children burst out laughing. The sparkle in his eyes returned. At that moment, the boy understood that the path to healing wounds is not always straight. It is full of twists and turns, encounters and reunions. And that love, to be true, needs to be constant, present, made up of small gestures repeated every day. Returning home, Tobias was exhausted but happy. Pingo and Nina slept cuddled together on the rug, and the boy, next to Tobias, felt the family had finally found its balance. But of course, life continued to bring surprises. And Tobias's adventures still had many chapters to come. Because after all, a real home isn't just made of walls and a roof. It's made of stories, courage, forgiveness, and, most importantly, of those who choose to stay. The awakening of adventure. Time went on, and with it, the family's routine. Tobias, Pingo, and little Nina. Now that house, once strange and distant, was becoming a true home. A place where footsteps echoed safely, laughter came more easily, and love flowed even in the most difficult moments. But as in every story worth telling, the unexpected knocked on the door, demanding courage, unity, and true proof of the bond that united them. One morning, after a night of heavy rain, the sky dawned gray, and the once welcoming street was covered in a thin layer of mud and wind-blown leaves. Tobias, Pingo, and Nina watched from the window as the family drank coffee. The boy, restless, clutched his mother's hand. Something in his gaze indicated he sensed a different energy in the air, a kind of silent call. "Shall we go outside, Tobias?" he asked, opening the door. The dog didn't hesitate. He darted off, licking the boy's face with the 3 puppies, chasing after him. They had energy to burn, and the wet yard became the perfect playground for play. But then a strange sound caught their attention, a low moan coming from the bush near the fence. Curious, they approached. There, hidden among the wet leaves, was a small cat. Thin, dirty, and frightened, it shivered in the morning chill. The boy crouched down, carefully extended his hand, and the cat, after a moment's hesitation, approached, purring softly. "He's hurt," said the mother, already, grabbing the box for the improvised rescue. The whole family mobilized once more. Tobias, who had previously seemed suspicious, now watched the kitten with a tender, almost protective gaze. Pingo and Nina approached, curious and gentle. Thus began the coexistence with the cat, who was named Luar, due to his white color and his bright eyes, like the light of the moon. What no one knew was that that kitten would bring with it an adventure that would change the family's life forever. Over the next few weeks, Luar seemed ever alert, aware of everything around him, and one night, when the house was already silent, he mysteriously disappeared. The boy, awakened by the absence of noise, immediately realized that something was wrong. "Moonlight's gone," he called, waking his parents. An intense search began there, involving neighbors, friends, and even strangers, all mobilized by concern for the kitten. Tobias, Pingo, and Nina followed every step of the search. For Tobias, that moment was more than just a search. It was proof that, despite their fears and wounds, the family was strong, and together they could overcome anything. And it was during one of these searches, on a dirt road near the house, that the boy heard a distant meow coming from a clearing surrounded by trees. He ran there and found Luar trapped between branches, scared but alive. The relief was immediate. Tobias and the puppies arrived soon after, running and wagging their tails, celebrating the return of their new friend. This experience brought the family and their pets even closer together. It was the moment they realized that true adventure lay in the togetherness, care, and love they shared. And Tobias, the puppy who never accepted being left behind, continued to be the silent hero of that story, showing that, with courage and loyalty, it is possible to weather any storm and find your way back home. The storm and the test of courage. The weather in the new city began to change. The sky, once blue and welcoming, filled with heavy gray and threatening clouds. The family, Tobias, Pingo, Nina, and Luar, were already more than accustomed to the quiet days, routines, and little adventures of the neighborhood. But what no one expected was that nature was preparing them a challenge of unexpected proportions. That afternoon, the wind began to blow hard, as if to warn that something big was coming. Tobias noticed the change in the air, the smell of rain, the crackle of swaying branches, and the eerie silence of the streets. When the first drops began to fall, the family hurried to gather what they could from the yard. Pingo and Nina ran to Tobias's little house, while Luar huddled near the window, watching the trees bend in the wind. But the storm soon turned into a ferocious storm. Lightning flashed across the sky, thunder rumbled loudly, shaking the entire house. The rain fell in torrents, flooding the streets, soaking the sidewalks, and turning everything to mud. Inside the house, the boy hugged Tobias, seeking comfort and strength. The dog, despite his fear, felt his heart racing, as if he knew he needed to protect everyone. Suddenly, a different crash caught their attention. A huge branch, torn off by the force of the wind, had fallen on the gate, blocking the exit. The family was trapped. Dad tried to push the branch away, but it was too heavy. Mom tried to calm the children, who were already crying at the sound of the thunder. Tobias barked, running around restlessly, but it was at that moment that the dog's instincts took over. He didn't want to just wait. Tobias wanted to act. With the boy holding tightly to the leash, he went to the backyard door, barking loudly as if asking for help. The noise mixed with the thunder of the rain, but Tobias wouldn't give up. Suddenly, the neighbor, Donna Alzira, appeared, protected by an umbrella, carrying a flashlight. "Are you guys okay?" he shouted, approaching the fence. "The branch blocked the gate," replied the father, worried. Together, with effort and solidarity, they managed to remove the branch, opening the way for the exit. But the night still had surprises in store. In the midst of the storm, a faint sound reached them, the cry of an animal. Following the noise, the family and Donna Alzira found a wet, shivering puppy hiding behind a trash can. It was an abandoned puppy, scared and hungry. The boy looked at Tobias and asked softly, "Can we help?" Tobias shook his ass as if to say yes. From that moment on, the puppy, named Hope, found a home and a family. And Tobias, more than ever, showed that his courage knew no bounds. That day, the storm taught us something very important. Even in the darkest moments, unity, love, and courage are the light that guides the way. Tobias, who once ran after the moving truck to keep up, was now the guardian of a new family, living proof that true home is where the heart chooses to be, always with those it loves. A new chapter of friendship and courage. As the months passed, the family became a true community of love and companionship. Tobias, Pingo, Nina, Luar, and little Esperanza, the newest furry member, forged a strong friendship, a kind of family within a family, full of adventures, discoveries, and challenges. But as in every story that touches the heart, what seemed to be a calm soon turned into another chapter full of emotion and growth. It was a Sunday morning when the boy woke to a strange light coming through the window. He heard a strange noise coming from the backyard, a mix of barking, meowing, and a sound he couldn't identify. He ran down the stairs and found Tobias at the gate, looking restlessly at the street. Pingo, Nina, and Esperanza were running in circles, and Luar, wide-eyed, was huddled near the gate. The boy opened the gate and saw a lady standing on the other side, with a worried expression, holding a cardboard box. "Good morning, I'm Donna Marta, and I need help," she said, her voice trembling. She explained that she had found a small litter of abandoned kittens on the street, motherless, alone, and in need of urgent care. The elderly woman was unable to care for them and was looking for a safe place. Without hesitation, the family agreed to help. They brought the puppies into their home, set up a cozy spot for them with blankets and a warm light, and began caring for them. Tobias, who had already faced abandonment and fear, was the first to approach the cubs. He sniffed each one, performed a sort of inspection, and after a while began to protect them like a true guardian. The boy watched everything with shining eyes. It was as if the experience had become a living lesson in empathy, responsibility, and unconditional love. The days passed, and with them came challenges. One of the puppies fell ill, requiring special care. The family had to organize medication, vet visits, and provide lots of affection. Meanwhile, Tobias, who had previously been more reserved, began to show an even sweeter and more patient side. He allowed the puppies to cuddle in his fur, play with his paws, and guide them through their first steps in their new life. It was a time of learning and growth for everyone. For Tobias, it was a reaffirmation of his importance within the family, of his role as protector and friend. For the boy, it was the discovery of a world where love demands daily courage and dedication. But life, always surprising, was preparing another test. One autumn afternoon, as the sky darkened and the wind began to blow hard, the house was filled with a strange, smoky smell. The alarm soon went off, and the boy ran into the backyard to find Tobias barking desperately. The family ran inside and saw that, through an oversight, a lit candle had fallen onto the carpet, starting a fire. Amidst the chaos, Tobias showed true courage. He ran to the boy's door, barking for him to come out, guiding him through the smoke and confusion. Everyone managed to get out in time, but the house was damaged. Even so, the family understood that thanks to Tobias, no one had been hurt. This episode further strengthened the love between them. Tobias wasn't just a dog who ran after the truck to keep up. He was the beating heart of that family, living proof that courage and love go hand in hand. And so, their story continued, full of challenges, but most importantly, full of moments that showed that true home is where there is friendship, protection, and unity. The lesson of time and the true meaning of home. The sun was already beginning to set when the family returned to the partially fire-damaged house. Outside, Tobias walked slowly, almost thoughtfully, as if carrying in his eyes the weight of everything that had happened, the fear, the courage, the protection, and the love that bound each of those beings together. The fire-scarred walls told a story of overcoming. That night, around the kitchen table, amidst the remnants of fatigue and worry, the boy looked at Tobias and realized something beyond words. He saw in the puppy not only the faithful friend who was always there, but the true symbol of resilience, unconditional love, and the strength that moves us to continue, even when everything seems difficult. In that house, previously made only of bricks and windows, there was now life, a life that was renewed every day, that took shape in the smile of each member of the family, in the friendship of the animals that lived there, and, above all, in the heart of Tobias, who never gave up on pursuing what really mattered. Over the next few days, the family worked together to rebuild every corner of the house. And though the work was hard, there was a deep sense that this was much more than repairing a physical structure. They were rebuilding a home, brick by brick, gesture by gesture, full of meaning. Tobias followed everything closely, always by the boy's side, who seemed to have learned an essential lesson. Home is not just where you live, but where you are loved, protected, and where you can be who you truly are. On a clear spring morning, the boy took Tobias, Pingo, Nina, Luar, and Esperanza for a walk in the park. They walked along flower-filled paths where birdsong filled the air. The boy watched Tobias run free, happy, free of the fear and uncertainty that had previously marked his gaze. And it was at that moment that he realized the journey of the dog chasing the moving truck had become a much greater adventure, a journey about love that stands the test of time, that grows stronger through trials, and that is capable of creating homes wherever we are. Tobias's story was the story of all of us, who, despite changes and challenges, always search for our place in the world, a place to call home. When they returned home, the boy put the leash on Tobias, stroked his golden fur, and whispered, "Thank you for never giving up on us. Thank you for showing that true home is where the heart is." And Tobias, his eyes shining, shook his ass, because he knew in that instant that no matter where they went, as long as they were together, this would be true home. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and follow each chapter of this incredible journey of love, courage, and overcoming. Because here, true stories show that, in the end, what truly matters is the love we carry within us, the roots that grow in the new earth. As the months passed, life in the new home began to transform into a place filled with stories, lessons, and moments of pure joy. Tobias, once just the forgotten dog in the moving truck, became the invisible pillar that supported their growing home. Each morning was a different adventure. The boy and Tobias, accompanied by Pingo, Nina, Luar, and Esperanza, explored the neighborhood streets, discovering new smells, new friends, and even little secrets hidden in seemingly ordinary corners that held memories yet to be created. One afternoon, when the sky was clear and the sun was gently warming, they found a vacant lot full of wildflowers and tall trees. The boy called Tobias to run, and together they strode through the underbrush, feeling the breeze and the freedom. There, in that forgotten corner of the city, Tobias caught a whiff of a familiar scent. It wasn't just the smell of damp earth, but something that made him pause for a moment, as if remembering something deep, ancient. The boy watched his friend closely and realized that at that moment, Tobias seemed to be connected to something invisible to human eyes. Perhaps it was the past, that previous life, the changes, the fears, and the hopes. Or perhaps it was the future, full of possibilities, yet undiscovered. They returned home that afternoon with a different feeling. It was as if they had planted an invisible seed in the heart of the neighborhood, and little by little, that seed began to sprout. The family became more involved with the neighborhood, making friends, sharing moments, and opening their doors to anyone in need. Tobias, with his sweet and loyal demeanor, won over everyone, from the children to the elderly. The house that had once been just a new place, full of strange walls and unfamiliar smells, was now full of life, laughter, and intertwining stories. But the true transformation happened within each person. The boy learned that change isn't just about leaving a place behind, but about making room to grow, to reinvent oneself, and to build new roots, even when the ground seems unfamiliar. And Tobias, who had once run after the truck so as not to be left behind, now ran through the streets with the confidence of someone who knows that home is not a fixed place, but a deep feeling of belonging. One calm night, while the family gathered together and watched the starry sky, the boy spoke softly to Tobias. "You taught me so much, friend, that home is where love grows, and that we are never alone if we have the courage to move forward." Tobias shook his butt and rested his head on the boy's lap, as if to say that there, in that moment, everything was right. Their story continued, one of small victories, discoveries, and a lot of love. A story that shows that no matter how many changes life brings, what truly matters are the bonds we build, the memories we cherish, and the courage to never give up. The season of internal changes. Autumn arrived with its golden hues and gentle winds, bringing not only the beauty of falling leaves, but also a subtle transformation in the family's routine and, especially, in Tobias's heart. After so many months of living and adapting, the dog who once ran after the moving truck to avoid being left behind seemed to be in a new phase of his life, calmer, more serene, but still as loyal and protective as ever. The boy, now a little older, watched Tobias with a different affection, understanding every look, every bark, every gesture of that friend who had faced so much. That season, the house seemed to breathe, a new air. The open windows let in the scent of dry leaves and damp ground, and the backyard was no longer just a space for playing, but a place of memories, made of laughter, adventures, and shared moments. But life, with its surprises, brought a new challenge. One morning, Mom felt a silent sadness that seemed to spread throughout the rooms. Her worried father tried to talk to her, but she just said she needed time to understand everything. The boy, confused, didn't know what was happening, but Tobias noticed. He could feel the anguish in the air that, even without words, made the family's hearts ache. It was then, one rainy afternoon, that the boy found Tobias in the corner of the yard, looking up at the gray sky with almost human eyes, filled with deep understanding. The rain fell on them both, and the boy sat beside the dog, feeling that there was a silence full of meaning there. They stayed like that for a while, embraced by the sound of the rain, until the boy realized that Tobias, in a way, was being his safe haven, the anchor in an invisible storm the family was facing. In the days that followed, Tobias showed his more caring side. He never left anyone alone, watching each one with his attentive, silent gaze, as if to say, "I'm here, don't be afraid." The mother, little by little, began to open up, to talk about her fears and sadness, and the family understood that this was a new phase, a change not external, but internal, which required patience and love. Tobias, Pingo, Nina, Luar, and Esperanza became indispensable companions on this journey. They were the ones who listened without judging, the ones who offered affection without asking for anything in return, the ones who made the house feel like a home, even when words failed. The boy, observing all this, learned an important lesson, that true change doesn't just happen in where we live, but in the way we face difficulties and care for each other. He understood that love, like Tobias, needs to pursue hope, even when everything seems uncertain, and that the safest home in the world is one where we can be vulnerable, where the heart finds peace, even in the storm. That night, beside Tobias, the boy whispered, "Thank you for being my best friend, for never leaving me alone." Tobias responded with a soft bark, a silent hug that said it all, And so the story of the dog who chased the moving truck continued, not just as an adventure tale, but as a story of love, courage, and transformation that resonated in the souls of those who knew it. The reunion with the past and the future that opens up. The seasons continued to pass, and with them, the lives of that family and their pets took new directions. Tobias, now calmer but always alert, seemed to have found his place in the world. Pingo, Nina, Luar, and Esperanza completed that small universe, each with their own personality, but united by an unbreakable bond. The boy, now almost a young man, observed everything around him with attentive eyes, learning more each day that life was not only made up of happy moments, but also of overcoming fears, discoveries, and above all, love. One day, while walking around the neighborhood, the boy heard a rumor among neighbors that made him curious. The family that lived in the old house is coming back to visit. It was strange to think about. The house where it all began, where Tobias had been forgotten in the moving truck, where the family had left behind a piece of themselves. They then decided to visit the place one weekend. A mixture of nostalgia and curiosity took hold of them. Arriving there, the boy felt a mix of emotions. The old house seemed quiet, a little abandoned, but it still held invisible memories, etched in the walls, the floor, and the air. Tobias, upon entering the yard, sniffed deeply, as if he were rediscovering a past buried in time. As they walked, the old family arrived, neighbors who returned to remember, to say goodbye, or perhaps to close cycles. It was a delicate reunion, conversations between former residents, stories of sunny days and starry nights in that same house. Memories that seemed to intertwine with the new stories the boy's family was now writing. But at that meeting, something happened that would change everything. One of the old neighbors brought up a memory that no one had told him. On the day of the move, when the truck left, a man had seen Tobias running after it, courageously and determinedly pursuing what he didn't want to lose: his family. This story, told with emotion, made the boy look at Tobias with even more admiration and love. They were not there just to revisit a physical place, but to understand the true meaning of home, family, and courage. Returning to his new home, the boy realized that, despite the different places, what truly mattered was the bond they had created. The old house was just a chapter, and what lay ahead was a book full of blank pages, waiting to be written with stories of love, unity, and hope. Tobias, now a little older, but with his spirit always young and vibrant, ran around the yard, happily, following the boy's every step. It was the same dog who one day refused to be left behind, who ran after the moving truck, and who now showed everyone that when we have courage and love, we are capable of transforming any place into a home. That night, before going to sleep, the boy caressed Tobias and said, "Thank you for showing me that even when everything changes, love is the only thing that remains, and that true home is where we feel complete." Tobias barked softly, as if in confirmation, and together they fell asleep, ready for life's next adventures. The true home that never gets lost time had passed, and the family, along with Tobias and their furry friends, were no longer the same people who left that house behind on moving day. They were stronger, more united, and above all, they had discovered the true meaning of home. On that special night, when the sky seemed to tell secrets with the stars shining brightly, the boy and Tobias sat in the backyard, looking at the illuminated house where laughter and stories still echoed. The boy tightened his grip on Tobias's collar and said in a firm but emotional voice, "You know, Tobias, at first I thought home was just a place, but today I understand that home is where the heart feels safe, and you were the heart that never let us give up." Tobias looked at him, his eyes shining in a way only true friends can, as if they understood every word, every feeling. But what many don't know is that this story, so full of overcoming, courage, and love, is far from over. Because just as Tobias ran after the moving truck to avoid being left behind, life will continue to test us, challenging us to move forward, to fight for those we love, and to never give up. And you, who have followed this journey thus far, are about to discover that the best is yet to come. new adventures, new bonds, and twists and turns that will touch your heart in ways you never imagined. Do you want to know what happened next? Do you want to follow every step of this incredible family and their four-legged friends who learned that true home isn't where we started, but where we choose to be together? So don't miss the next video, because there, the stories get even more intense, the emotions even stronger, and hope is reborn every second. Sign up now, activate the bell, and come be a part of this journey, because this story isn't just theirs, it could be yours too. Remember, sometimes all we need is the courage to go after what we love, and the certainty that, where there is love, there will always be our true home.